1937, as a young student, I fell desperately in love with Assunta, the 16-year-old daughter of a shoemaker, and where Alto spent a happy day in 1948. In San Gimignano, with Alto's sketch in our hands, we managed to locate the exact spot where he had stood while doing the sketch. An intriguing way of bridging the time gap. On the same track, we went somewhat later to Delphi, where we were again able to find the places that Alto had stood sketching. What particularly fascinated him in Delphi was the antique theatre, the shape of which is reiterated in various ways in his own works. Alto's dream of the Mediterranean focused on the Mediterranean people. He was inspired by the hope that in our age too, a type of human being could emerge who is individualistic and yet socially integrated, open to anarchistic fellowship and the personal message of art. Neo-Renaissance man in the 20th century Europe. The dream of the Mediterranean has at its heart the idea that there is an element, the sometimes warm and welcoming, sometimes stormy and dangerous sea, which unites 3 continents and innumerable countries and people into some sort of kinship and affinity. This dream, which was shared by the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Christians, and the Muslims, has taken root particularly on the European side of the Mediterranean. It came close to fruition in imperial Rome, whose universalism was inherited by the Roman Catholic Church and later by various empires. Today, this dream again arises in the vision of a united Europe. It is not a dream of standardization that seeks to stamp out the individuality and local traditions of the different regions. The dream of the Mediterranean has always allowed for the differences that are found around the common sea. What has to be eliminated is war and armed conflict, and hindrances to the free movement of trade, peoples, and ideas. We do not know whether these endeavors will ever lead to a working political community, and it is even more uncertain whether it will be a blessing for all those involved. Looking back, we observe that exchange between the countries of the Mediterranean has never been of equal benefit. There has always been some particular port that has attracted the major part of the capital and cultural assets, while others have withered. After Alexandria's heyday, it was the turn of Rome, then Constantinople, Venice, Marseille. The queens of the Mediterranean have changed, as have the vassals and favorites. The question is whether the ancient pattern can in the long run be repeated. I am among those who have put their trust in the Mediterranean heritage as the engine power and the guide to ever new conquests in the eternal struggle for social welfare. I believe that the combined heritage of Greece, Palestine, and Rome was a sound basis to build on. That rationalism, democracy, human Christian values, and statutory administration were reliable principles to be stuck to. Unfortunately, my lifespan happens to have coincided with a time when it is more and more difficult to look to the future with optimism. A time when it has become increasingly obvious that something basically wrong crept into the scheme of things at the very beginning. Does the fault lie with the sort of scientific rationalism that disregards the whole and, through technology, draws us into encroaching far too deeply on the natural balance? Could it be unrealistic ideas about democracy and social right that have disrupted the structure of society? Or is it the mechanisms of the monetary economy which distort real needs? That something has gone wrong, and things cannot go on as they are at present, is evident. Above all, from the pollution problems that have struck both the outer environment, land, air, and water, and, even more, the inner landscape, our ideas, goals, values. In other words, the indications are that we are approaching a catastrophe, a collapse of the entire Mediterranean dream. Is there no way out? The optimists hope that before the final threat arrives, people will come to their senses and abandon their short-sighted goals, their bad habits and animalistic instincts. But why would this happen now when it never has happened before? The saying goes that history teaches us nothing. But one thing it does show quite clearly, that disasters are inevitable. And so is regeneration from the ashes of disaster. What is there left that mankind has not already suffered? The flood, the ice age, earthquakes, famine, the Black Death, genocide, folk migrations, world wars. It is quite understandable that people worry today about the dying forests, overpopulation, car exhaust fumes, and accidents at nuclear power plants, and I, too, am haunted by these nightmares. But when I'm on Leros, hearing the sheep bells mingle with the sound of the breakers against the rocky coast, watching the shepherds running down the mountain ridge, I am seized by the thought that we should not exaggerate our anxiety. Nature, of which our race is a part, will manage to shake off the threats of our time and make a new start. One day, factory chimneys will no longer be belching smoke, and all the cars will have rusted away. The towns will be depopulated, and tourist hotels converted to sheep shacks. One day the sea will be clean again. The new springtime will spread its carpets of flowers across the hills, and new people will rejoice over the gifts of life.